Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Chats, Stats, and Fun Facts. It's another season preview. This time, we're talking about Ryan Sailor. Saur, tell me, what is the first thing that comes to mind when you think about Ryan Sailor?
Surprised that he's still here, but he's been here for a while. He's one of our tenured players. I was very happy to see him get that contract and be back in the squad. I thought he'd be let go this season, but you know what? He is one of those eternal presences, at least in recent memory, that stayed on into Miami. So happy for him, and it'll be exciting to see what he does this season and what he brings to the table.
Yeah, there's a reason he was brought back when guys like Lawson Sunderland weren't and Cole Jensen wasn't. And so I think that's interesting, and I want to explore that a little bit. But let's start with the fun fact. Ryan Sailor has a chance to pass Robbie Robinson this year for the most minutes from a super draft pick in Inter Miami history. He's at 2,442 minutes. He needs 353 minutes to pass Robbie Robinson. Last year, he had 344 minutes played, 2 starts, 10 total games. Listen, we know he's not a starting center back on this Inter Miami team, but he does play a role. He does come in. He has a little bit of versatility along the back line. He can come in and save you when you need him to. And he's a guy that just never complains, puts his head down, and when it's his opportunity, comes in, he does what he's asked to do. And listen, he did not have a moment that made you question him at any point last year in any of his 344 minutes. So where are we at with Ryan Sailor?
You know what? It's so interesting that he doesn't play that many games. He's been brought back into this team under a new coach, and I'm actually comfortable with that. I'm happy with the kind of role that he does because, as you mentioned, whenever he took the pitch, it wasn't like chaos, and we didn't see him put too many, bad decisions. And it felt like he knew what he was doing. He was decent. He was solid as a role player. I'm very happy to have him on his team. You asked me where I am with him. I'm very positive in him being part of that defensive back line. If and when he needs to fill in, as long as he does what he did last season. I remember a couple of games where we were really short on options. Ryan Sailor had to start a couple of games, and I thought, boy, this is going to be a long evening. But he was fine. He was not the issue in that back line whenever he played, and that in itself is a big compliment. We are getting a few defensive reinforcements this season, so it'll be very interesting to see what his minutes look like. But overall, I think as a third option, a fourth option, a fifth option, he's good. He can do a job for us, and I'm happy that he's back.
Yeah, those 2 starts came early in the season, I believe, against NYCFC in Colorado when we were dealing with some guys on international break. Some guys are coming back from international break. Some guys that were injured, and so that's his role, is to step in when the team is short on bodies and to provide quality and not cost your team big moments and big games. And he did that well, and I think he's done that to a sufficient degree his entire Inter Miami tenure. And so for me, I'm happy to have him as the 4th, 5th choice center back. Listen, he's not ahead of David Martinez. He's not ahead of Tota Aviles. He's not ahead of Maxi Falcone when they come in. And probably Gonzalo Lujan, although we're still yet to see exactly what Lujan is for this team. And probably even Noah Allen and maybe Busquets are also potentially in the pecking order ahead of him. But you see every year these guys go down, and you need bodies to come in, and Ryan Sailor does a job every single time he's called upon. So I really appreciate that. But again, I think the big question to me is, why was he brought back to this team when other guys that fill very similar roles on the roster weren't brought back? And I think that means that Javier Mascherano watched the film and said, I see something in this guy. He is the tallest player on the back line, certainly, potentially in the entire team. Maybe just talking about the goalkeeper, Drake Callender, but he's 6'4", 6'3", 6'4". He's got good size, good height. That's always nice to have on the bench when you might need it. Like, I think there's a role for him, even though it seems on paper like he's 6th or 7th choice. I think he's going to find a way to get minutes this year and have a positive impact.
Yeah, I like to think of him as the journeyman, which is a boxing lingo, and some might think it's a negative connotation, but the journeyman is somebody who fights across the board, steps in the ring with anybody, and basically has a long career. May not be a champion, may not be the person who's always on top, but he fights regularly. He fights with anyone and everyone. He is the journeyman of this team because he has been here potentially the longest in that back line, at least, if you maybe take into account Noah Allen and some of the others. But he also, as you said, has a role to play. There were a couple of instances in that last season, I remember, where it was 85th minute. We needed to shore up the defense because our defensive backline was absolutely shot. And he came in and he played in the right centre back role. He came in and he played as the main centre back. He came in and he played on the wings as well as a left back or a right back. I don't remember, but he does the job that is required of him. And for me, that's a very important quality to have. You need, especially in that defensive backline, you need players who are able to be versatile and recognize what their role is. Don't demand that many minutes, but when they're called upon, they're ready to do a job. That for me is a very important asset. Secondly, I think we recognize how many defensive issues we had last season and how much quality we needed to bring in. We needed to bring in at least two, if not three, potentially high level center back players. And recognizing that, we knew that if we are letting go some of the other players, we can't necessarily lose out on someone like Ryan Saylor because we then have to find another person who is able to do some of that role that Ryan Saylor is going to do in the coming season. So for me, I think having that as an option is very important. And if you think about role players and what he's going to bring to this team, I don't think there's anyone better out there that would replace Ryan Saylor. So for me, I think he does an important job. He is a role player, and he's going to do that for us this season.
Javier Mascherano was a center back, and he was an undersized center back. You know, he's 5'10", 5'11". I think that he sees that guys that aren't 6'4" can still do a good job as a center back. And, you know, we're signing Maxi Falcone, and I think that's part of the reason why is because the coach knows that you can do the job without being tall. But then he also knows intimately the limitations you have if you're not tall. And I think he's going to want a guy who's got that size, that height for certain situations when he needs it. And he's now got that in one center back on this roster. No one else. I think Toto Aviles, I was just looking at the roster, is the second tallest, most physically, you know, aerially dominant player on the back line. And he's only 6'1". I know you have Redondo and Busquets who are a little bit bigger. You know, maybe we'll bring in a backup striker who can help on set pieces and stuff. But in terms of real size, Mascherano is going to know you don't need it, but that it's probably nice to have in certain situations. And I think that's potentially the biggest reason why he's still on this roster. And I think that means Javier Mascherano has an idea of how and when to use this player. So again, it seems easy on paper to say he's not going to play much. He's not going to get any minutes. But I think there are times and places for a guy like Ryan Saylor. And I think we're going to see that this season more than maybe we could predict, but that those moments will pop up.
Can I give you a scenario?
Yeah.
We're 1-0 up against Monterrey in the 89th minute, and they're absolutely bombarding our box with crosses and
Exactly
putting those bodies in. You bring on Ryan Saylor to shore up the defense. You have 5-6 defenders in there to just head the ball out. That for me is a very important role against a very good team. If you need bodies in the box, if you need height, if you need somebody to deal with aerial balls, you bring him towards the end of the game, and he does a really important job for you. And you can be proud of that responsibility and that role if that's the case, right? So completely agree with you. There's definitely a role for him, and he may get some minutes in the season as of yet.
And that role last year, we had Christoph, who had some height. We had Nico Freda, who had some size. We had Campana, who was a physical presence. Like, we had guys on last year's roster that did that are no longer here. And the guys that we replaced them with aren't, well, we'll see on some of these guys, but they don't seem like that type of profile. So I think Ryan Saylor has a real role. Let's get into predictions. Last year, he played 344 minutes. Again, 2 starts, 10 games played. That's the over-under. 344.5 minutes played this season. Are you going over or are you going under?
I'm going to go under, but only slightly. I think he's going to be around that 320, 350 mark. I think it's going to be slightly under 344. Just because we have a little bit more option in that defensive backline. We're bringing in a couple of reinforcements, and he is now further down the pecking order. But I still expect him to have a couple of games out. You need to keep your bodies fresh whenever they're available. And I think he's going to have a couple of games, but he's going to stick around those similar minutes. I'm going to go slightly under.
I think this depends almost entirely on the development of Tyler Hall, who is a young player, just turned 18, that is a center back, defensive player. And is he going to break out and get 250, 300 minutes this year? I think those minutes might into Ryan Sailor's if he does. And if he doesn't, if he's not quite ready, if he needs another year with the B team, then I think Ryan Sailor's going to pass this. So I will say he passes it. I think he's going to get somewhere between 400 and 500 minutes. I'm going with the over. Any other predictions for this season from Ryan Sailor?
No, I hope he gets a few good runouts and contributes to this team because at the end of the day, we're going to need every single player on that roster to do a job for us if we're going to go far in tournaments and if we're going to win the big ones. So, Ryan Sailor, your time will come. Just step up when you have to.
Here's my prediction. We are going to do a post-game show, and we're going to give an award for saving our butts to Ryan Taylor this year. It's not going to be a man of the match, but it's going to be one of our signatures. And that's coming. I'm very confident about that. But anyways, guys, we will see you in the next one. Till then, have a wonderful, wonderful night. Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Do us a favor and hit that like and subscribe button. Since our first viewer, sharing this with you all has been the very best part. So from the beginning until the end, thank you for being a part of this and have a wonderful day.